Welcome, dear listener. As you settle in and allow the day's concerns to drift away, I invite you to journey with me into a world long past. A world where life was measured not by the ticking of a clock, but by the rising and setting of a sun, the turning of the seasons and the rhythms of toil and worship. Tonight, we travel to early medieval Europe, to the sprawling empire of Charlemagne. It was a realm of great ambition, religious fervor, and imperial splendor, but also a land of hardship and unrelenting labor for the vast majority of its people. Imagine yourself now in a quiet village nestled amid rolling fields and dark forests. The air is cool, touched with the scent of damp earth and smoke from peat fires. The distant toll of a church bell marks the hour. Here, peasants live lives of ceaseless work, their days bound by the needs of their lords and the demands of the church. Heavy taxes press upon their shoulders, and their every deed is shaped by religious expectation and social obligation. Through the stories of their days and of the powerful figures who ruled over them, we will explore this world together. Let us begin now with the daily life of a peasant, rising before dawn to till the stubborn soil. Chapter 1. Plowing with oxen from dawn. Imagine the first pale light of dawn spreading across a damp, misty field. The air is chill, heavy with the scent of dew-soaked grass. In a modest wooden hut nearby, a peasant family stirs from restless sleep. The roof above them is thatched, the walls of wattle and daub, and the single-room interior is sparse and dim. A few coals smolder in the hearth. There is little to eat, perhaps a crust of coarse black bread, or a thin porridge of barley. Yet there is no time to linger. The man of the house shoulders his rough woolen tunic and steps out into the gray morning, his breath mist before him. In the small yard, a pair of broad-horned oxen wait, their breath steaming in the cold air. These beasts are the family's most valuable possession, slow but steady, capable of pulling the heavy wooden plow through the stubborn earth. The peasant readies the plow, a simple frame with an iron-tipped blade. It will barely scratch the dense, clay-rich soil, long unbroken by deeper tilling. His hands, calloused and rough, guide the oxen to their task. The first furrow is always the hardest. The ground is uneven, riddled with stones and clumps of roots. Each step forward is a struggle, the plow shuddering in his grip. The oxen strain, muscles rippling beneath their thick hides. All the while, the sky lightens. Other peasants join him in the surrounding fields, each guiding their own teams. There is little talk, only the soft grunts of effort, the creak of wooden yokes, and the lowing of oxen. The rhythm of their work is unchanging, dictated by the need to prepare the field before the planting season begins. Every day matters, for if the crops do not take root in time, there will be hunger come winter. As the sun climbs higher, the peasant wipes sweat from his brow. The labor is unrelenting. Stones must be cleared from the field. The blade must be checked and sharpened. The oxen fed and rested. The family relies on what little they can coax from the land, and so each furrow, each row is a battle against nature itself. In the distance, the village church bell tolls again, marking the passing of another hour. The sound carries over the fields, a reminder of the church's presence in every aspect of life. For this land does not belong to the peasant. It is held by a lord and worked in service to him. A portion of whatever grows here must be given in tax, in tithes to the church, and in dues to the manor. Only what remains will feed the family, if there is enough. The midday sun offers little relief. There is no leisurely meal. Only a brief pause to drink water from a leather flask and eat a few bites of cold bread or dried beans. Then it is back to the plow. The oxen move with a slow, plodding gait. The peasant encourages them with soft words, knowing that their strength is as finite as his own. Throughout the afternoon, the work continues. The weight of the plow, the resistance of the earth, and the aching in his arms become a constant companion. Yet there is no thought of stopping. The seasons turn and the fields must be made ready. There are no hired hands, no machinery to ease the burden. Only the tools passed down through generations and the endurance of the human body. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon, shadows lengthen across the furrowed fields. The peasant calls the oxen to a halt, their sides heaving with exertion. The plow is set aside, the beasts led back to their modest shelter. There they are rubbed down, watered, and given their share of the day's meager grain. Returning home, the peasant finds his family gathered around the hearth. The evening meal is simple, perhaps a stew of root vegetables, thickened with grains. There is little conversation, only the soft murmurs of weary voices. Outside, the fields rest beneath the deepening sky, their furrows dark and raw. The work will resume with the dawn. As sleep overtakes the household, the rhythm of life continues. The plow waits, the oxen wait, and the land itself waits, bound to the tireless cycle of the seasons. In Charlemagne's empire, for the peasant, this is the shape of existence. Relentless, unchanging, and dictated by forces beyond his control. Morning returns once again, soft light filtering through the thin gaps in the hut's walls. The peasant rises before the first rays of sunlight reach the ground, body stiff from yesterday's toil. Another day in the field lies ahead, as predictable as the turning of the earth. The oxen must be harnessed, the plow brought back to the same patch of soil, each row extending the work of the previous day. This rhythm is life, and there's little space for change or rest. Outside, the village is beginning to stir. Other families, equally bound to the land, are emerging from their homes. A thin column of smoke rises from the communal bakehouse, where women prepare coarse loaves for the day. The scent of burning wood mingles with the earthy aroma of tilled fields. It is a small comfort, a reminder of the fragile community that supports them all. The peasant moves steadily, leading the oxen back to the worksite. The worn leather yokes creak softly as they settle into place, the animals knowing the task ahead. There's no expectation of ease. The plow bites into the soil once more, its iron tip catching roots and stones buried deep within. With each pass, the peasant's arms strain against the weight, muscles aching from the unending exertion. Nearby, the voices of fellow laborers can be heard. Quiet conversations, often little more than a murmur, pass between them. News of the Lord's intentions, word of a poor harvest in a neighboring village, or a priest's sermon on the need for greater piety. The church's teachings are ever present, woven into the fabric of their days. Each hardship is framed as a test of faith, each misfortune a reminder of sin. The peasants accept these lessons with weary resignation, for they have little choice. Time slips past in a haze of labor. The sun rises higher, casting long shadows across the uneven ground. Occasionally, the peasant pauses to wipe sweat from his brow, his tunic damp with effort. There is no luxury of rest, for each furrow completed brings them one step closer to the hope of a good harvest. The soil is stubborn, reluctant to yield its bounty, and each foot gained is hard won. As midday approaches, the field begins to shimmer beneath the sun's warmth, the oxen slow, their breath coming heavier. The peasant leads them to a shaded spot where they may rest briefly and drink from a small stream that winds through the village outskirts. He too takes a moment, sitting upon a flat stone, eating a few mouthfuls of barley bread. The quiet hum of insects fills the air, a momentary pause in the day's unbroken effort. Soon enough, the labor resumes. The plow carves deeper into the earth, turning over fresh soil, rich and dark beneath the surface. It is a small satisfaction, knowing that this work will one day feed the family. Yet beneath that hope lies the ever-present uncertainty of the seasons. A late frost, too much rain, or a summer drought could undo weeks of toil in an instant. The peasants live always on the edge of want, their fortunes tied to forces beyond their control. As afternoon deepens, the peasant's body grows heavier with fatigue, his movements slow, though determination remains. The oxen, patient and steady, follow his lead. Together they press on, row by row, until the sun begins its slow descent once more. The golden light slants across the fields, painting the freshly turned earth in warm hues. Finally, the day's work draws to a close. The peasant leads the oxen home, offering them grain and water as thanks for their labor. The tools are cleaned and stored, ready for the morrow. Inside the humble hut, the family gathers once again around the hearth. The evening meal is modest, its flavors simple but sustaining. As night falls, the village sinks into a quiet stillness. The stars emerge above, cold and distant, their constancy a faint comfort. Within his home, the peasant rests, though sleep comes slowly to tired limbs. The knowledge of another dawn, another day of labor, weighs upon him. Yet this is the life he knows, the rhythm of existence under Charlemagne's rule. In this empire of vast ambition, the dreams of kings and nobles are built upon the backs of countless peasants. Their toil shapes the land, their sweat sustains the realm. And for them, the cycle of plowing and planting, of harvest and hunger, continues without end. Chapter 2. The life of a serf imagined a small village once more, its cluster of huts encircled by fields and dense woodlands. The air is cool in the early hours, carrying the faint scent of damp soil and wood smoke. Here, beneath the canopy of Charlemagne's empire, most of the peasants are not free men. They are serfs, bound to the land upon which they live and toil. Their lives are shaped not by their own will, but by the demands of the local lord, whose manor house looms just beyond the edge of the village. The life of a serf is one of obligations. The land they farm is not their own, but granted to them in exchange for labor, rent, and unwavering loyalty. Each season brings new duties. In spring they plow and sow. In summer they reap and store. Autumn demands the gathering of fallen fruit, the slaughter of livestock, and the preparation of stores for the lean months ahead. Even in winter, when the earth lies dormant, there is wood to be chopped, repairs to be made, and duties to the manor to fulfill. On certain days, the Lord's steward arrives to collect dues, sometimes in grain, sometimes in livestock, sometimes in coin, though the latter is rare among the peasantry. These dues weigh heavily on the serfs, who often struggle to retain enough for their own families after the demands of the manor and church are met. There is little room for negotiation. Failure to comply invites harsh penalties, ranging from fines to corporal punishment, or even seizure of land. Beyond these material obligations lies the unyielding weight of personal duty. A serf may not leave the manor lands without permission. Marriage requires the lord's consent, often accompanied by a fee. If a serf wishes to pass their small plot to a son or daughter, approval must again be sought. In every aspect of life, from birth to death, the shadow of the Lord looms large. Yet within these bounds, the rhythm of village life persists. Families gather in the evenings, sharing simple meals of bread, pottage, and whatever can be gathered from the forests or streams. Stories are told beside the hearth, passing down the wisdom of generations. Children learn from their elders, not through formal schooling, but through the steady example of labor and duty. Religion offers structure to these lives, providing solace amid hardship. The village priest serves as both spiritual guide and enforcer of moral order. Feast days punctuate the calendar, offering brief respite from toil. On such days, the community gathers in the churchyard, the air filled with hymns and the scent of incense. Yet even these moments are tinged with obligation, for attendance is expected, and tithes must still be paid. The serf's knowledge of the wider world is limited. News travels slowly, carried by merchants or wandering monks. Stories of the emperor's conquests or distant lands seem more legend than fact, their details dimmed by distance and time. For most, life is measured in seasons, in the turning of the plow, the ripening of grain, the cycle of birth and death within their own village. Occasionally, change arrives unbidden, a new steward with harsher demands, a poor harvest bringing hunger, or a traveling official seeking fresh levies for the emperor's campaigns. In such times, the fragile balance of life can be easily upset. Yet through endurance and quiet strength, the serfs persist. Their labor forms the backbone of Charlemagne's empire, unseen yet essential. As twilight deepens over the village, smoke curls gently from chimneys. The fields rest, and so too do the weary bodies of those who work them. In the stillness of night, the serfs dream of little beyond the hope of fair weather and a kinder steward. Such is the life they know, one of unending labor, bound by duty and shaped by the will of others. With the arrival of dawn, the life of the serf resumes its measured course. There is no true break from labor, only a brief pause between one day and the next. The morning light reveals the simple outlines of the village, each hut much like its neighbor. The thatched roofs are weathered, the walls patched as best they can be. Within, families rise early, children helping to tend animals or fetch water while the adults prepare for another day of work in the fields or at the manor. Obligations to the Lord are constant and varied. On certain days, the steward demands courtly labor, requiring serfs to work directly on the Lord's demand lands rather than their own. These tasks may involve plowing, sowing, harvesting, or repairing fences and buildings. The serf has little say in the matter. Refusal is not an option. Time spent fulfilling these duties means less time tending one's own plot. Yet the demands must be met if a family hopes to retain their small portion of land. There are other forms of service as well. A serf may be called to provide firewood for the manor, to weave baskets, to supply eggs or poultry. In times of feast or celebration, the manor expects additional offerings, both in goods and in labor. When the Lord travels or entertains, extra hands are needed to prepare food, care for horses, or serve in the great hall. All of this is done without payment, performed under the long-standing obligations of tenure. The legal standing of a serf leaves them with little recourse. If wronged by the steward or another tenant, justice is administered by the Lord's court, where the scales seldom tip in favor of the peasantry. Fines are common, imposed for minor infractions or simply to raise revenue. A serf might be fined for allowing livestock to stray, for gathering wood in the wrong place, or for failing to meet quotas. Even in the smallest matters, the authority of the manor is ever present. Family life, though constrained, remains a source of strength. Within their homes, serfs maintain a quiet resilience. Skills and crafts are passed from one generation to the next. Women often tend small garden plots, raise poultry, spin wool, and prepare food for the household. Men labor in the fields or forests. Children are taught early to contribute, helping with chores and watching over younger siblings. Amid these daily efforts, moments of simple joy can still be found. The laughter of children at play, the comfort of a warm hearth on a cold evening, the companionship of neighbors gathered in quiet conversation. Yet beneath this surface lies the ever-present uncertainty of life. A poor harvest can bring hunger, illness can strike without warning, and a Lord's whim can change the course of a family's fate overnight. There is no safety net, no guarantee of protection beyond what the church might offer in spiritual comfort. Survival depends upon endurance, cooperation, and the mercy of nature and authority alike. The church occupies a central place in the life of the serf. The village priest, often the only literate figure in the community, serves as spiritual guide and moral arbiter. Services mark the passing of time, with Mass celebrated on Sundays and feast days. The rhythms of the liturgical calendar intertwine with the cycles of labor, shaping the year through rituals and observances. Tithes, however, place an additional burden upon already strained resources. 1/10 of a serf's produce is owed to the church, leaving even less to sustain the household. In the evenings, after the day's work is done, the village settles into a quieter rhythm. Families gather around their hearths, eating simple fare and sharing news or stories. The night brings a fleeting respite, a few hours of rest before the cycle begins anew. Dreams may wander beyond the confines of the manor, imagining freedom or fortune, yet morning inevitably returns them to their appointed place. Such is the life of the serf in Charlemagne's empire. Bound to the land, to the will of lords, and to the dictates of the church, their world is one of endurance and quiet perseverance. It is a life shaped by forces beyond their control, yet within these bounds, the serfs find ways to sustain their families, their communities, and themselves through the unending flow of time. Chapter 3. Tithes and Taxes. As the sun rises once more over the landscape of Charlemagne's empire, the fields shimmer beneath a pale sky, and the rhythm of labor begins anew. Yet beyond the simple struggle to coax life from the soil, another burden weighs upon the peasants and serfs, the steady, inescapable pull of tithes and taxes. These obligations are not paid in the abstract figures of coinage, which few among the peasantry ever see, but in grain, livestock, wool, and the hard-earned fruits of labor. They shape every season, every harvest, and every decision a peasant must make. Imagine yourself walking the narrow track between village and manor. The path is lined with rough hedgerows, beyond which lie the furrowed fields and scattered huts of the villagers. The manor house, larger and more sturdily built, stands at a distance, its stone walls a silent reminder of authority. Here resides the lord or his appointed steward, charged with collecting the taxes that sustain both his household and the broader machinery of imperial governance. The obligations fall into several forms, each exacted at its appointed time. The church claims a tithe, 1/10 of all produce, to be offered in acknowledgement of divine providence. It is a heavy expectation, yet few would dare to withhold it. The church's influence is vast, its teachings clear. To fail in one's duty is to risk both spiritual condemnation and social censure. Thus, when the harvest is gathered, the best of the grain, the finest of the livestock, and the richest of the produce are set aside for the priest's collection. Beyond the tithe lies the Lord's due. Rents must be paid, often in the form of grain or other goods. The quantity is set not by the peasant's means, but by the traditions and agreements of the manor. Some lords are lenient in times of scarcity, but many are not. To fall behind in payment invites penalties, seizure of property, or worse. The steward keeps meticulous records, each family's obligations tallied and reviewed. Additional fees arise unpredictably. A marriage within the village might require a fine to the lord for permission. A death might incur a heriot, a payment for the right of inheritance. The mill, owned by the lord, exacts a toll for grinding grain. The bakehouse requires its fee for the use of the oven. Even the forests are not free. Gathering firewood or hunting game requires permission, and such rights are often granted only at a price. The cumulative weight of these demands shapes daily life. The peasant does not merely farm to feed his family. He must calculate how much of each crop will be claimed by others, how much can be set aside for lean times and how much may be traded or consumed. A poor harvest, a sick ox, or an unexpected fee can throw the entire balance into jeopardy. The margins are thin, the risks ever present. The collection of tithes and taxes is not an abstract affair. On appointed days, the steward or the priest's men arrive in the village, often accompanied by scribes and guards. The peasants gather what is owed, stacking sacks of grain, tethering livestock, and preparing carts of goods. The process is public, a display of submission to both earthly and divine authority. Complaints are rare, for they carry their own risks. To speak against the system is to challenge powers far beyond the reach of common folk. Among the peasants, strategies for survival emerge. Some seek to hide a portion of their yield, burying grain in secret pits or selling goods in distant markets beyond the steward's notice. Others rely on the goodwill of neighbors, sharing resources in times of need. Yet the system's reach is long, and discovery brings harsh retribution. Through it all, the rhythm of tithes and taxes continues unabated. It is woven into the fabric of life, an ever-present current beneath the more visible struggles of the field and home. Each year, as the cycle of seasons turns, the peasants prepare anew for the demands they know will come. As autumn approaches, the fields of the village grow heavy with ripening grain. The air is rich with the scent of earth and hay, and the villagers labor with renewed urgency. The harvest is a time of hope, yet also of anxiety. It is now that the full weight of tithes and taxes will be felt most keenly. The success of the harvest determines not only whether the family will eat through the winter, but also how much must be surrendered to the church and the manor. Each sheaf of grain is carefully counted, each basket of fruit weighed in the mind against the obligations soon to be met. When the reaping is done, the collected grain is brought to the village's central barn, where it is threshed and winnowed. The best of the yield, the cleanest grain, is reserved for the tithe. The priest, or his appointed tithe collector, oversees this division. With solemn words and practiced eye, he ensures that the church receives its due. The tithe is not only a spiritual obligation, but also a material one, feeding the clergy and supporting the maintenance of the church and its charities. After the tithe is rendered, the steward arrives to claim the Lord's share. The steward, representing the authority of the manor, is a figure both respected and feared. His records are precise, his expectations firm. He measures out what is owed in grain, livestock, wool, and other goods. The peasants watch closely, knowing that even a small shortfall could lead to accusations of withholding or dishonesty. Beyond the routine demands of the harvest, the villagers must also contend with extraordinary levies. Should the emperor call for new troops, or if a new campaign is planned, additional taxes may be imposed to fund the endeavor. These are unpredictable and often deeply resented, for they arrive without regard to local circumstance or hardship. Yet refusal is not an option. The emperor's writ carries the weight of imperial authority, and compliance is enforced through the Lord and his agents. In times of hardship, such as a poor harvest or widespread illness, the burden of taxes becomes even more severe. The village may plead for leniency, sending emissaries to the steward or to the church. Sometimes their pleas are heard, but more often they are met with indifference. The obligations must be met, regardless of misfortune. In such years, families go hungry, selling off livestock or prized possessions to meet their dues. Debt becomes a cruel master, binding them ever more tightly to the manor's control. Amid this constant strain, the social bonds of the village provide what little support is possible. Neighbors share food and labor, aiding one another in times of need. Communal feasts, though modest, offer moments of fellowship and respite. Yet these comforts cannot shield them from the system's relentless demands. Each year, the cycle repeats. The planting, the tending, the harvest, and then the giving away of what has been so hard won. The church, for its part, offers spiritual solace. The priest preaches that earthly suffering earns heavenly reward, that obedience and piety will be remembered in the world to come. The peasants, bound by faith and necessity, cling to these words. They hope for a future where their labor is no longer shadowed by fear of want or punishment. As winter approaches, the fruits of the year's toil diminish. Granaries are carefully measured, meals rationed with caution. The knowledge that more tithes and taxes await in the seasons ahead weighs upon every household. The manor's demands are constant, indifferent to the changing fortunes of those who labor beneath its rule. Thus life continues for the peasants of Charlemagne's empire. Bound by duty, faith, and the unyielding hand of authority, they endure. Through the cycles of the year and the burdens of tithe and taxes, they sustain not only their families, but the very foundations of the realm. Their unseen labor supports the emperor's ambitions, the church's grandeur, and the manor's wealth, though they themselves live ever close to the edge of hardship. Chapter 4. The manor system. The manor is more than a grand house upon a hill or a symbol of noble power. It is the heart of rural life in Charlemagne's empire, an institution that governs the rhythms, rights, and responsibilities of those who live within its domain. For the peasants and serfs, the manor is both protector and oppressor, a source of structure but also a wellspring of burdens. To understand their world is to understand the intricate web of relationships that define the manor system. Picture, if you will, the layout of a typical manor. At its center stands the Lord's Hall, a building of timber or stone, imposing in its scale compared to the humble huts of the village. Surrounding it are various outbuildings, stables, barns, workshops, and the bakehouse. The manor lands extend outward, encompassing fields, meadows, and woodlands, divided into two distinct parts. The domain is the portion reserved for the lord, worked by the peasants through obligatory labor. The remainder is parceled out to the villagers for their own use, though still under the lord's control. The lord himself may be present or may reside elsewhere, leaving the day-to-day management in the hands of a steward. This steward wields considerable power, overseeing everything from the collection of rents to the resolution of disputes. His word carries the force of law within the manor's boundaries, and peasants approach him with a mixture of deference and apprehension. Daily life within the manor is dictated by a strict hierarchy. The peasants, whether free tenants or bound serfs, each hold their land through tenure, a grant that obliges them to provide services and payments in return. These obligations are carefully recorded in the manor rolls, ensuring that none can easily shirk their duties. The steward conducts periodic surveys, inspecting the fields and holdings, adjusting rents, and settling disputes over boundaries or inheritance. Labor on the domain is a central part of this system. Each week, peasants must spend a set number of days working the lord's land, tending crops, repairing fences, or performing other necessary tasks. This labor is in addition to work required on their own plots, leaving little time for rest. During peak seasons, such as harvest or planting, these demands grow even heavier, as the manor calls upon all available hands to ensure its prosperity. The obligations extend beyond mere labor. When the lord hosts a feast or receives distinguished guests, peasants may be summoned to provide food, fuel, or other supplies. They are expected to maintain the manor's roads and bridges, ensuring that travel and trade can proceed unimpeded. In times of conflict, they may be called to assist in the defense of the estate, though poorly armed and trained. Justice within the manor is administered through the manorial court, presided over by the lord or his steward. Here, disputes between tenants are heard, fines levied, and offenses punished. The range of cases is broad, from minor quarrels and property disagreements to breaches of customary law. The court is also responsible for maintaining order, ensuring that the complex web of rights and duties is upheld. Religion is deeply entwined with the manor system. The village church, often supported by the Lord, plays a central role in community life. The priest not only offers spiritual guidance, but also serves as a moral voice within the manorial hierarchy. Church festivals and holy days mark the passage of time, offering brief moments of respite from labor. Yet even these observances reinforce the social order, reminding peasants of their place beneath God, the church, and the Lord. Beneath this rigid structure, daily life is shaped by the cycles of the seasons. Planting, tending, and harvesting dictate the rhythm of work. In winter, when the fields lie fallow, other tasks occupy the peasants, repairing tools, spinning wool, preparing for the year ahead. Each task is performed with an awareness of obligation, for the manor's demands are ever present. Through it all, a delicate balance is maintained. The peasants depend upon the manor for protection, justice, and access to land. While the manor depends upon their labor and produce, it is a system marked by mutual need, yet deeply unequal. The weight of duty rests most heavily upon those at the bottom, whose toil sustains the comfort and authority of those above. Chapter 4. The Manor System. The manor is more than a grand house upon a hill or a symbol of noble power. It is the heart of rural life in Charlemagne's empire, an institution that governs the rhythms, rights, and responsibilities of those who live within its domain. For the peasants and serfs, the manor is both protector and oppressor, a source of structure but also a wellspring of burdens. To understand their world is to understand the intricate web of relationships that define the manor system. Picture, if you will, the layout of a typical manor. At its center stands the Lord's Hall, a building of timber or stone, imposing in its scale compared to the humble huts of the village. Surrounding it are various outbuildings, stables, barns, workshops, and a bakehouse. The manor lands extend outward, encompassing fields, meadows, and woodlands, divided into two distinct parts. The domain is the portion reserved for the lord, worked by the peasants through obligatory labor. The remainder is parceled out to the villagers for their own use, though still under the lord's control. The lord himself may be present or may reside elsewhere, leaving the day-to-day management in the hands of a steward. This steward wields considerable power, overseeing everything from the collection of rents to the resolution of disputes. His word carries the force of law within the manor's boundaries, and peasants approach him with a mixture of deference and apprehension. Daily life within the manor is dictated by a strict hierarchy. The peasants, whether free tenants or bound serfs, each hold their land through tenure, a grant that obliges them to provide services and payments in return. These obligations are carefully recorded in the manor rolls, ensuring that none can easily shirk their duties. The steward conducts periodic surveys, inspecting the fields and holdings, adjusting rents, and settling disputes over boundaries or inheritance. Labor on the domain is a central part of this system. Each week, peasants must spend a set number of days working the Lord's land, tending crops, repairing fences, or performing other necessary tasks. This labor is in addition to work required on their own plots, leaving little time for rest. During peak seasons, such as harvest or planting, these demands grow even heavier, as the manor calls upon all available hands to ensure its prosperity. The obligations extend beyond mere labor. When the lord hosts a feast or receives distinguished guests, peasants may be summoned to provide food, fuel, or other supplies. They are expected to maintain the manor's roads and bridges, ensuring that travel and trade can proceed unimpeded. In times of conflict, they may be called to assist in the defense of the estate, though poorly armed and trained. Justice within the manor is administered through the manorial court, presided over by the lord or his steward. Here, disputes between tenants are heard, fines levied, and offenses punished. The range of cases is broad, from minor quarrels and property disagreements to breaches of customary law. The court is also responsible for maintaining order, ensuring that the complex web of rights and duties is upheld. Religion is deeply entwined with the manor system. The village church, often supported by the Lord, plays a central role in community life. The priest not only offers spiritual guidance, but also serves as a moral voice within the manorial hierarchy. Church festivals and holy days mark the passage of time, offering brief moments of respite from labor. Yet even these observances reinforce the social order, reminding peasants of their place beneath God, the church, and the Lord. Beneath this rigid structure, daily life is shaped by the cycles of the seasons. Planting, tending, and harvesting dictate the rhythm of work. In winter, when the fields lie fallow, other tasks occupy the peasants: repairing tools, spinning wool, preparing for the year ahead. Each task is performed with an awareness of obligation, for the manor's demands are ever present. Through it all, a delicate balance is maintained. The peasants depend upon the manor for protection, justice, and access to land. While the manor depends upon their labor and produce, it is a system marked by mutual need, yet deeply unequal. The weight of duty rests most heavily upon those at the bottom, whose toil sustains the comfort and authority of those above. As the seasons turn once more, the cycle of obligation within the manor continues without pause. For the peasants and serfs, the manor is not simply an institution or a distant authority, but an everyday presence that shapes their thoughts and actions. The steward's word must be heeded, the manor's customs observed, and its demands met with unflagging effort. This understanding permeates every aspect of life, creating a world where duty to the manor is as constant as the rising sun. The bond between peasant and manor is reinforced through a network of customs and traditions. Some of these are formal, written in the manor rolls and enforced by the steward. Others are unwritten, passed down through generations as part of the village's shared memory. Together, they create a sense of continuity, a framework within which life unfolds. Yet this framework leaves little room for personal freedom. A peasant may not move to another manor without permission. Marriage outside the manor requires negotiation, and inheritance is tightly regulated. Even the tools and animals used in daily work may, in part, belong to the lord. The social fabric of the manor is equally defined by these relationships. Within the village, status is determined by one's standing with the steward, by the size of one's holdings, and by reputation for diligence and loyalty. While all labor beneath the lord, small distinctions of rank and respect exist among the peasants. Some families, through generations of service or prudent management, gain modest privileges. Others, through misfortune or neglect, fall into debt or disfavor, their position increasingly precarious. The lord himself, whether resident or absent, remains a figure of immense power. His ability to shape the lives of those beneath him is near absolute. He may grant favors, reduce rents, or forgive debts, earning loyalty and gratitude. Conversely, he may impose new burdens, exact punishment, or demand greater service, instilling fear and resentment. The peasants tread carefully in their dealings with both lord and steward, seeking always to avoid a tension that might bring hardship. Feasts and festivals provide rare occasions when the rigid boundaries of the manor soften, if only for a time. On certain holy days, the peasants are granted respite from labor, gathering in the churchyard or commons to share food, music, and simple pleasures. These moments offer a glimpse of joy amid the monotony of toil. Yet even here, the hierarchy remains visible, as the lord and his household preside from a place of prominence. Economic life within the manor is largely self-contained. While some trade occurs with neighboring manors or traveling merchants, most needs are met within the estate's boundaries. Craftsmen produce tools, clothing, and household goods. The mill grinds grain into flour. The forge supplies nails and fittings. The manor thus forms a small world, its inhabitants reliant upon one another, yet always under the gaze of the Lord's authority. In times of crisis, such as poor harvests or disease, the manor structure provides limited support. The Lord may grant temporary relief or distribute stored grain, but such acts are not guaranteed. More often, the peasants must rely upon their own resilience and the aid of neighbors. The church offers spiritual comfort, but little material assistance. Survival depends upon the strength of community ties and the wisdom of managing scarce resources. Through all these complexities, the peasants endure. Their lives are bound to the land and to the manor, their days shaped by unending cycles of labor and duty. The manor system offers order and stability, yet at a great cost. Autonomy is sacrificed, freedom curtailed, and the fruits of one's labor are shared first with those who rule. For the peasants of Charlemagne's empire, this is the world they know, a life of constant striving beneath the unyielding structure of the manor. Chapter 5. The Coronation of Charlemagne. Far from the furrowed fields and smoky huts of the peasantry, there exists another world, one of grand ceremony and imperial ambition. To understand the full sweep of Charlemagne's empire, one must look beyond the manor to the courts of kings and the soaring halls of cathedrals. Among these, one event stands apart, echoing across the centuries: the coronation of Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans. Though distant from the peasants' daily life, this moment would shape the very world in which they lived. Imagine now the ancient city of Rome, its streets worn by time, yet still bearing traces of imperial grandeur. The air is crisp on this December morning, the year 800 marked by a sense of momentous expectation. Pilgrims, nobles, and clergy gather in the shadow of old stone, drawn by the promise of a spectacle unlike any other. At the heart of this assembly stands St. Peter's Basilica, its columns rising beneath the vaulted heavens, the scent of incense thick in the air. Within the basilica, preparations are underway. Garlands of greenery hang between towering columns, while golden candlelight flickers against marble walls. The air hums with solemn chants, their deep tones resonating through the vast space. Here, amid this sacred setting, Charlemagne will receive the crown that links him to the legacy of Rome itself. Charlemagne, king of the Franks and Lombards, enters the basilica clad in regal finery. His stature is imposing, his bearing confident. Years of conquest and governance have forged a ruler both formidable and pragmatic. Around him stand the great figures of his court, bishops in rich vestments, counts and dukes in finely woven cloaks, their faces composed with practiced solemnity. The service unfolds with deliberate majesty. Latin hymns rise in waves, their melody both mournful and triumphant. The Pope, Leo III, officiates, his role pivotal. Though Charlemagne holds great power, it is through the church that imperial authority is sanctified. The alliance between crown and cross is here made visible, binding temporal rule to divine favor. As the ceremony reaches its height, a hush falls over the gathered throng. Charlemagne kneels before the altar. In this moment, Pope Leo III takes the imperial crown, a circlet of gold wrought in ancient style, and places it upon the king's head. The assembled voices ring out, Emperor of the Romans, a title dormant for centuries now revived. The act is both symbolic and deeply political, reasserting Western Christendom's claim to the legacy of Rome, distinct from the distant Eastern Empire in Constantinople. For those present, it is a moment of awe. Yet for the peasants across the vast reaches of the empire, this coronation is but a distant tale. News of the event will travel slowly, carried by wandering monks and merchants. In time, it will become a point of pride, woven into sermons and village lore. The empire now holds an emperor, one whose authority stretches from the North Sea to the Mediterranean, from the Pyrenees to the Danube. The implications, however, will soon reach even the humblest of fields. An emperor commands armies, enacts laws, and influences the very structure of the church. New taxes may be levied to fund campaigns. New bishops appointed to oversee distant parishes. The weight of imperial ambition will press downward, reshaping the landscape of power. For now, within the great basilica, the ceremony continues. Mass is celebrated, the Eucharist offered, and oaths of loyalty sworn. The new emperor receives the homage of his nobles, each stepping forward in turn. Their words ring with solemn vows of service and fidelity, though ambition and rivalry simmer beneath the surface. Outside, the city stirs with celebration. Bells peal across the rooftops, and crowds gather in the streets. The scent of roasting meats mingles with the smoke of torches, voices raised in song and cheer. Yet even amid the revelry, there's a sense of change. A new chapter has begun, one whose ripples will extend far beyond the marble halls of Rome. As the days following the coronation unfold, the news spreads outward from Rome. Word of Charlemagne's elevation to Emperor of the Romans travels north, carried by emissaries, clergy, and merchants. In monasteries and cathedral scriptoria, scribes set ink to parchment, recording the event for posterity. In distant villages and manors, the tidings are slower to arrive, filtered through the voices of traveling monks or noble messengers. For the peasants laboring beneath gray skies and heavy earth, the coronation is at first an abstract tale, its meaning obscure. Gradually, its significance takes shape. The coronation signals not merely a change of title, but a reordering of the realm. Charlemagne's imperial authority grants new weight to his laws and ambitions. His alliance with the church deepens, intertwining spiritual and temporal power in ways that will touch every corner of the empire. Edicts will follow, and with them new expectations placed upon both lords and peasants. Among the nobility, the coronation demands renewed oaths of loyalty. Great lords and lesser vassals must acknowledge the emperor's supremacy, their positions affirmed or adjusted within the new imperial hierarchy. For some, this is an opportunity, a chance to draw closer to imperial favor. For others, it stirs unease, the fear of new demands or diminished autonomy. Politics shifts, alliances form and dissolve, and through it all, the emperor's hand grows heavier upon the land. For the church, the coronation is a triumph. It affirms the pope's role as kingmaker, reinforcing the idea that imperial authority is sanctified through the church. Bishops and abbots, secure in this newfound influence, extend their reach into the countryside. New churches are founded, existing ones expanded. The collection of tithes grows more rigorous, ecclesiastical courts more active. For the peasantry, this means deeper entanglement with both secular and spiritual rulers. In the villages, the coronation brings indirect but tangible effects. Lords may impose new taxes to fund imperial projects or military campaigns. Men may be called to serve in the emperor's armies, drawn from the fields to march beneath banners they scarcely understand. Roads and bridges, vital for the movement of troops and goods, are repaired or expanded, often through forced peasant labor. The rhythms of rural life are disrupted, if only in part, by the demands of empire. Yet for many peasants, life continues much as before. The manor remains the center of their world. The stewards voice their daily concern. The emperor is a distant figure, his name spoken in prayers and proclamations, but rarely glimpsed. What matters most is the turning of the seasons, the yield of the harvest, the satisfaction of the manor's obligations. Still, beneath the surface, the empire's shifting currents are felt. A new sense of order, of imperial ambition, seeps slowly into the fabric of rural life. In time, the image of Charlemagne as emperor becomes part of the realm's collective memory. In sermons and tales, he is depicted as a divinely favored ruler, a champion of Christendom. His deeds are recounted in church and hall alike, blending history and legend. For the peasants, these stories offer a distant echo of grandeur, a world apart from their own toil, yet now inextricably linked to their fate. The coronation of Charlemagne marks a turning point. It reshapes the political and religious landscape of Europe, setting the stage for centuries of change. For the common folk of the empire, it is a reminder that even in their small bounded lives, the forces of history move unseen around and through them, their course altered by events far beyond their fields. Chapter 6. Aachen Cathedral's relics to the north of the Alps. Beyond forests and rivers lies the city of Aachen. In the years following his coronation, Charlemagne makes this place his favorite seat, drawing craftsmen, scholars, and clergy to its growing courts. Among its many wonders, one building stands supreme, the Great Cathedral. Here, amid stone and glass, art and relic, the emperor seeks to bind the earthly realm to the divine. For the common folk who journey to its doors, it offers both spiritual solace and a glimpse of imperial majesty. Imagine the road to Aachen winding through wooded hills and open fields. Pilgrims walk the path in groups, their cloaks dusted from the journey. Some come from nearby manors, others from distant lands, drawn by tales of the cathedral's treasures. The road is lined with shrines and crosses, each a place to pause and pray. The air carries the scent of pine and damp earth, mingling with the quiet murmur of pilgrims' voices. As the city approaches, its spires and towers rise above the rooftops. The streets bustle with life, merchants hawk wares, children dart through narrow alleys, and the clang of a distant forge rings through the air. At the heart of this activity stands the cathedral, its octagonal dome gleaming in the sunlight. Crafted with care and artistry, it blends Roman and Frankish design, stone upon stone, rising in testament to the emperor's vision. Stepping within, the pilgrim enters a world transformed. The dim light filters through stained glass, casting hues of blue and gold upon marble columns. The scent of incense thickens the air, mingling with the soft chant of unseen monks. Beneath the vaulted ceiling lies the heart of the cathedral, the collection of relics that has drawn so many to this place. These relics are objects of profound reverence. Here lies a fragment of the true cross, a piece of cloth said to have wrapped the infant Christ. The bones of saints and the garments of holy martyrs. Each is encased in ornate reliquaries, fashioned of gold and silver, adorned with jewels that gleam softly in the dim light. Pilgrims approach with bowed heads, their footsteps hushed upon the worn stone floor. The relics offer more than inspiration. They are believed to grant divine favor, to heal the sick, to protect the faithful. Tales of miracles abound, spread by word of mouth and recorded by monks. A child cured of lameness, a plague halted by the relic's presence, a barren woman granted a child after prayer. Such stories draw yet more pilgrims, their hopes mingling with their faith. Yet devotion carries a price. To view the relics, to attend Mass within the cathedral, pilgrims often leave offerings. Coins, food, or given in gratitude or supplication. The Church records these gifts meticulously, their value added to the cathedral's growing wealth. For many peasants, the offerings come at great personal cost, given in hope that spiritual favor will ease their worldly burdens. The cathedral itself stands as a symbol of imperial and ecclesiastical power. Built at Charlemagne's command, it proclaims the union of crown and cross. The emperor's throne, set within the gallery, overlooks the sacred space below. From here he observes great masses, his presence a reminder of the divine right claimed by his rule. The architecture, the relics, and the rituals intertwine, each reinforcing the other's authority. For the peasants who return home from Aachen, the memory of the cathedral lingers. They speak of its beauty, its relics, and the sense of awe it inspires. In their own small churches, they repeat the stories, their faith renewed, though their lives remain bound by the same unchanging duties. The relics, distant yet near in spirit, become part of the rhythm of belief that sustains them through toil and hardship. As months turn to years, the fame of Aachen Cathedral spreads across Charlemagne's empire and beyond. Pilgrims from all walks of life continue to make the journey. Among them are not only peasants and townsfolk, but also merchants, knights, and even minor nobility. For many, the pilgrimage itself becomes an act of devotion, a form of penance, or a quest for divine favor. The road to Aachen is long and often difficult, yet the promise of encountering the sacred relics offers a powerful draw. For the peasantry, such a pilgrimage is a rare and costly endeavor. A family might save for years to make the journey. Leaving their land, even temporarily, risks falling behind in the relentless cycle of labor and obligation. Yet the hope of spiritual reward, the chance to seek healing for a loved one, or to pray for relief from hardship compels many to undertake the risk. Upon arrival, pilgrims may spend days within the city, queuing to enter the cathedral or attending the special services held in honor of the relics. During great festivals, the streets fill with throngs of visitors. Inns and taverns bustle with trade, and temporary stalls offer food, candles, and religious tokens. The city reaps the benefits of this influx, its markets enriched by the presence of so many seeking the divine. Inside the cathedral, the ritual viewing of relics is carefully ordered. Clergy guide the flow of pilgrims, maintaining an atmosphere of reverence. Special ceremonies mark the display of the most venerated items. On certain feast days, the relics are brought forth with solemn processions, accompanied by chants and the tolling of bells. The faithful press close, their prayers rising in hushed tones. For many, the experience is profoundly moving, a rare moment when the mysteries of faith seem palpable. Yet not all pilgrims are equal in the eyes of the Church. Nobles and wealthy patrons receive privileged access, viewing the relics at leisure, sometimes even touching the sacred objects under clerical supervision. Their donations are generous, their status affording them a place of honor. Peasants, by contrast, often must wait in long lines, their glimpses brief, their offerings meager. Still, for them, the opportunity is priceless, a memory to be cherished and retold. The impact of these visits extends far beyond Aachen. Returning pilgrims bring with them a renewed sense of faith and purpose. Tales of the cathedral's splendor, of the relic's power, spread through villages and towns. Local priests echo these stories in sermons, encouraging greater piety and reinforcing the Church's authority. Relics, both genuine and dubious, begin to appear in lesser churches, each claiming its own piece of sanctity. For the peasant, These narratives become part of the fabric of life. In times of sickness, families may invoke the relic's protection. During lean years, they may pray for a sign, recalling the miracles said to have occurred in Akan. Though their world remains one of hardship, the spiritual connection offers solace, a sense that the divine is present even in their struggles. Meanwhile, the cathedral itself continues to grow in wealth and renown. The offerings of generations accumulate, funding further embellishments and ensuring the clergy's continued prominence. The alliance between imperial power and the church remains strong, each reinforcing the other's claim to legitimacy. Charlemagne's vision endures in stone and ritual, shaping the spiritual life of the empire. For those who labor in the fields, the relics of Akin are more than distant treasures. They are symbols of hope, of a world beyond the toil of daily life. Whether through whispered tales or solemn prayers, the memory of the sacred remains a quiet strength amid the unending demands of the land. Chapter 7. The Benedictine Rule Beyond. The bustling cities and the sprawling manners of Charlemagne's empire lies another realm, quieter yet profoundly influential. It is the world of the monastery, governed by the rule of Saint Benedict. For the peasants and serfs of the land, the presence of these monastic communities brings both comfort and burden. The monks shape not only spiritual life, but also the rhythms of the local economy and the balance of power within the countryside. Imagine now a monastery at dawn. Stone walls enclose a space of ordered calm, where gardens bloom and cloisters echo with soft footsteps. The bell tower sounds the first note of the day, a deep and measured tone that drifts over the surrounding fields. Within, monks rise from their simple beds, donning habits of undyed wool. Their life is one of discipline, their days governed by the rule established by Saint Benedict centuries earlier. This rule prescribes a life of prayer, study, and labor. The monks gather in the chapel, voices blending in plainsong, filling the dim space with a reverent harmony. After prayer, they move to their assigned tasks. Some tend gardens or vineyards, others copy manuscripts in the scriptorium, their pens scratching across parchment. Still, others oversee the management of monastic lands, properties often granted by kings and lords in exchange for spiritual favor. These lands are vast and productive, worked by peasants much like those of any manor. The monastery, while a place of devotion, is also an economic power. Its steward collects rents, its granaries store the fruits of the peasants' labor, and its cellars hold wine and oil. The monks themselves engage in trade, their goods sought after for their quality. Thus, the monastery exists both apart from and within the secular world, its influence far-reaching. For the peasants, the monks are both benefactors and landlords. The monastery offers alms to the poor, cares for the sick, and provides a place of refuge in times of trouble. Its church stands open, its liturgies a source of spiritual sustenance. Yet the obligations to the monastery are many. Tithes must be paid, labor rendered, and deference shown. The monastery's records are precise, its expectations clear. In this, it mirrors the manor, though cloaked in the language of faith. Education, too, flows from the monastery. Monks teach reading and writing to select boys, usually sons of nobility or promising clerks. For the common peasant, such learning remains out of reach. Yet the presence of literacy, the slow copying of texts, ensures that knowledge is preserved and spread, shaping the culture of the land in subtle ways. Monastic time is measured not by the hours of toil, but by the ringing of bells, the cycle of prayer known as the divine office. 8 times a day, the community gathers to sing psalms and chant prayers. This rhythm of devotion weaves through the life of the surrounding villages as well. The peasants hear the bells from afar, reminders of the sacred amid the profane. The rule also calls for hospitality. Travelers and pilgrims find shelter within the monastery's guest house. Poor or ill peasants may receive food or care. In this way, the monastery offers a thread of compassion within the harsher fabric of medieval life. Yet such charity does not erase the broader structures of obligation and control. As Charlemagne's empire expands, so too does the reach of the Benedictine rule. Monasteries multiply, their influence shaping both faith and governance. Through their prayers, their writings, and their management of land, the monks serve as a bridge between the spiritual and the earthly, reinforcing the empire's order. For the peasants, the monastery remains a place of mystery and power. Its chants drift across the fields, its bells mark the hours, its priests guide the soul. Yet beneath the surface lies the same tension found throughout the empire, a life bounded by duty, shaped by forces both seen and unseen. As the sun climbs higher over the cloistered walls, life within the monastery unfolds in steady, deliberate rhythm. The monks, bound by their vows, continue their labors, each action a form of devotion. In the scriptorium, skilled scribes meticulously copy sacred texts and classical works, preserving the wisdom of ages. Illuminated manuscripts, adorned with intricate designs and vivid pigments, take shape beneath their careful hands. These works will travel beyond the monastery, finding homes in cathedrals and noble libraries, quietly influencing thought across the realm. Elsewhere within the grounds, monks tend herb gardens. Their knowledge of plants and their healing properties drawn from both ancient texts and practical experience. Simple remedies prepared from these gardens are offered to the sick of the surrounding villages. Though medical understanding remains limited, this care provides a measure of comfort to those with few other means of aid. The monastery's role as landlord remains central. Fields and vineyards tilled and tended by peasants yield crops that fill the monastery's storehouses. Overseers appointed by the abbot manage these lands with precision, ensuring that quotas are met and that the labor force remains steady. The obligations of the peasants to the monastery mirror those owed to secular lords, their tithes and dues collected with equal rigor. Seasonal festivals and religious feasts bring the villagers into closer contact with monastic life. On these occasions, the monastery opens its doors wider. Special masses are held, relics displayed, and sermons preached. The peasants gather in the church, their simple garments contrasting with the richly embroidered vestments of the clergy. They listen intently, their faith deepened by the solemn beauty of the ritual. Yet not all encounters are so welcome. The monastery's legal rights are extensive. It may hold its own courts, judge disputes among its tenants, and enforce penalties. In matters of inheritance, marriage, or land use, the monastery's influence is often decisive. The peasants, while respectful of the monks' spiritual authority, remain wary of their worldly power. The monks themselves live with a certain detachment from these concerns. Their rule calls for humility, obedience, and a focus on the eternal rather than the temporal. Yet the reality of managing vast estates requires a degree of engagement with the secular world. Abbots correspond with noble patrons, attend imperial councils, and navigate the complexities of church politics. In this, the monastery becomes a microcosm of the empire itself, where the spiritual and the political intertwine. For the common peasant, the monastery stands as both beacon and barrier. It offers hope of divine intercession, a vision of a life devoted to higher purpose. Yet it also embodies the structures of authority that shape their daily existence. The chants that echo across the fields remind them of the sacred, but also of the obligations owed to both church and lord. Through the quiet persistence of the Benedictine rule, the monasteries of Charlemagne's empire exert a lasting influence. They preserve knowledge, sustain faith, and reinforce the social order. Their bells mark the hours, their prayers shape the days, their power felt in every corner of the land. For those who labor beneath this order, life continues in its familiar rhythm. The monastery remains a distant ideal, a place of both comfort and control. In its shadow, the peasants endure, their toil and their faith woven together in the unending cycle of the seasons. Chapter 8: Village Festivals and Feasts. Amid the unrelenting demands of labor, tithes, and obligation, there are rare moments when the rhythm of village life shifts, if only briefly. Festivals and feasts, interwoven with the church calendar and ancient custom, offer peasants fleeting respite from their toil. These occasions, few and far between, become bright markers in the otherwise gray fabric of the year. They provide not only celebration, but also a deep reaffirmation of community and faith. Imagine a small village preparing for such a day. The morning sun finds the streets already busy, the usual solemnity replaced by a quiet undercurrent of excitement. Within humble huts, families don their best garments, simple wool or linen freshly washed, perhaps adorned with colored embroidery, handed down through generations. The scent of baking bread and roasting meats drifts through the air, blending with the earthy aroma of the fields. Central to the day's proceedings is the church, adorned with garlands of greenery and bright flowers. The bells ring out, their peal carrying across the fields. Villagers gather, drawn by both custom and genuine devotion. The service is longer and grander than usual, with chants and incense filling the space. The priest speaks of the festival's significance, weaving tales of saints and miracles that stir both reverence and wonder among the gathered. Following the service, the village green comes alive. Stalls appear, offering bread, cheese, ale, and other simple fare. Musicians strike up lively tunes on pipes and drums, their melodies familiar and comforting. The air hums with conversation, laughter, and the occasional bark of a dog. Children dart between the legs of adults, their joy unrestrained, for on such days even the sternest parent allows a little mischief. Games and contests provide further diversion. Wrestling matches, foot races, and tests of skill with bow or staff draw eager participants and cheering crowds. Victories are modest. The rewards often no more than a jug of ale or a wreath of flowers. But the honor of winning carries great weight within the close-knit community. Food, of course, forms the heart of the feast. Communal tables groan beneath simple yet hearty offerings. Stews thick with root vegetables, fresh loaves, wheels of cheese, and, for the fortunate, roasted meats shared among neighbors. Ale flows freely, loosening tongues and warming weary spirits. For many peasants, these festivals offer the rare chance to eat well, to set aside the ever-present worry of scarcity. Amid the revelry, old stories are retold, tales of past festivals, of ancestors long gone, and of the saints whose lives inspire the day's observance. The young listen with wide eyes, the old with quiet smiles, for in these stories the village's shared identity is renewed. The bonds of kinship and neighborly loyalty are strengthened, vital threads in the fragile fabric of rural life. Yet beneath the joy lies an unspoken awareness of impermanence. The festival will soon end. The fields will call once more. The manor's obligations will resume. The peasants savor the moment, knowing that such days are rare, scattered like precious jewels through the long expanse of the year. As evening approaches, the music slows, the crowds thin. Families begin their slow walk home, the stars emerging one by one in the deepening sky. In the quiet that follows, the memory of the day lingers. For the peasants of Charlemagne's empire, these festivals offer more than merriment. They are a vital expression of community, faith, and fleeting freedom, a momentary lifting of the burdens that define their lives. The festival continues into the cool embrace of night. As the last light fades beyond the horizon, torches and lanterns flicker to life, casting pools of warm glow across the village green. Shadows dance on timber walls, their movement gentle, mirroring the slower pace of the evening's revelry. The music softens, yet it does not cease. Now, familiar ballads drift through the air, sung by voices worn but joyful. The melodies speak of love and loss, of the land and the seasons, weaving the shared memories of the village into song. Around the fires, smaller gatherings form. Elders speak in hushed tones, recounting tales of their youth or the deeds of ancestors. Their words are laced with both wisdom and gentle humor, grounding the younger folk in a sense of continuity. Here, stories serve not merely to entertain, but to teach, to remind each listener of the virtues of resilience, loyalty. At the edges of these circles, the young gather in their own groups. Courtships, long constrained by the watchful eyes of family and the rigid customs of the manor, find space to blossom amid the loosened formality of the feast. Shy glances are exchanged, words spoken softly beneath the canopy of stars. For some, this night marks the beginning of new bonds, ones that will shape future seasons of village life. The monastery's presence is also felt. Though monks do not join in the dancing or feasting, the abbey's influence lingers. The priest, his voice earlier raised in sermon, now moves quietly among the people, offering blessings and gentle counsel. His words remind the villagers of the sacred beneath the secular, of the need to temper joy with humility and gratitude. The people listen with respect, for faith runs deep, even amid the laughter of the feast. As the night wears on, weariness begins to settle. The youngest, their energy spent, are gathered by parents and led homeward. The older folk linger a while longer, reluctant to surrender the fleeting freedom of the night. Slowly, the fires burn lower, the songs grow fewer. One by one, the villagers depart, footsteps soft upon the earth. Returning to their homes, they carry with them the warmth of shared moments, a brief respite from the year's unending demands. Within the simple walls of their huts, families speak quietly of the day's joys, of friendships renewed, of hopes for the seasons to come. Sleep comes easier on such nights, dreams touched by the lingering spirit of the feast. When dawn arrives, it brings with it the familiar weight of obligation. Fields await the plow, livestock the tending, and the manor's dues the meeting. Yet something subtle remains, a quiet strength drawn from the bonds reaffirmed beneath the stars. The memory of the festival lingers in conversation, in laughter shared over simple meals, in the gentle ease with which neighbors greet one another in the days that follow. For the peasants of Charlemagne's empire, these festivals are more than moments of joy. They are vital threads in the fabric of community, offering hope amid hardship, connection amid isolation. Through them, the people sustain not only their bodies, but their spirits, drawing from these rare and precious days the resilience needed to endure the long labor of life. Chapter 9. Disease and Famine. Yet for all the quiet joys and rhythms of village life, there remain forces against which neither hard work nor faith can always prevail. Disease and famine, ever-present threats in Charlemagne's empire, strike without warning, bringing suffering that touches every household. They arrive on silent feet, spreading swiftly through the narrow lanes and crowded huts, or creeping slowly with the withering of crops beneath an unkind sky. When they come, the fragile balance of life is shattered, replaced by hunger, fear, and loss. Picture a village in the grip of an early frost, the crops nearly ready for harvest, blackened beneath the sudden chill. Wheat and barley lie stunted in the fields, their heads thin and brittle. Hopes of a bountiful yield fade. The peasants, who have labored for months in expectation of filling their granaries, watch helplessly as nature undoes their work. Even a single poor harvest threatens survival, for the margins between sufficiency and hunger are perilously thin. As the year turns, the effects deepen. With the grain stores low, meals grow smaller, simpler. Bread is stretched with ground acorns or coarse husks. Pottage thins. Meat becomes a rare luxury. Families ration what little remains, eyes always on the dwindling sacks and barrels. The manor's demands do not lessen, and so the first share must still be given to the Lord and the church. What remains is never enough. Hunger weakens the body, leaving it vulnerable to disease. In close quarters, with little understanding of cleanliness or contagion, illness spreads rapidly. Fevers, coughs, and rashes appear, first in one household, then another. The sick are tended as best they can be, but remedies are few and often ineffective. The village priest offers prayers and blessings. The monastery provides what care it can, but the limits of human knowledge and resources quickly become apparent. Fear spreads alongside the sickness. Families isolate themselves, keeping children indoors, avoiding neighbors. The village green, once lively with conversation and play, falls silent. Bells toll more frequently from the church tower, each peal marking another passing. Graves, shallow and hastily dug, appear at the edge of the churchyard. The familiar rhythms of life dissolve beneath the weight of loss. In the face of such trials, faith becomes both refuge and burden. The priest urges repentance, warning that sin may have brought divine punishment upon the village. Pilgrimages to local shrines increase. Offerings are made in hope of mercy. Some seek the counsel of monks or the intercession of relics, believing that spiritual devotion might yet turn the tide. Others, worn thin by grief and hunger, withdraw into quiet despair. Amid the hardship, acts of compassion endure. Neighbors share what little they can. The strong care for the weak, even at risk to themselves. The monastery distributes thin broth and loaves to those in direst need. Yet, the scale of suffering often overwhelms such efforts. Hunger gnaws at resolve, and sickness claims lives indiscriminately. As winter deepens, the village contracts. Fields lie fallow, work halts, and homes grow colder as fuel runs low. Children's laughter fades, replaced by the soft weeping of mothers. The air hangs heavy with the scent of smoke and sickness. In this season, the bonds of community are tested as never before. Yet within even this darkness, the human spirit endures. Those who survive, their bodies lean and faces hollow, look to the return of the sun, to the hope of another planting, another chance. Life, though diminished, persists, carried forward by stubborn faith and the unyielding will to endure. It is this resilience that sustains the peasantry of Charlemagne's empire, generation after generation, through hardship and hope alike. As the long winter loosens its grip, the first signs of spring emerge. Yet for many villages, the scars of famine and disease remain fresh. Fields that should be green with new growth lie patchy and bare, for there were too few strong enough to sow them. Cattle and oxen, weakened or lost, stand in diminished herds. Their granaries, once the promise of survival, hold only shadows and dust. Hunger lingers, its presence felt in every hollow cheek and weary glance. Those who endured the harshest months now face the uncertain challenge of rebuilding. Seed grain is scarce, carefully measured and rationed for planting. Without sufficient seed, the coming harvest cannot restore what has been lost. The Lord's steward, though aware of the hardship, still enforces obligations. Tithes to the church, rents to the manor, must be met, though often in reduced or delayed form. Negotiation, once rare, becomes necessity as peasants plead for time, for mercy, for a chance to recover. Disease, too, leaves its mark. Some who survive the fevers now bear lasting weakness or disfigurement. Families are smaller, households broken by loss. The social fabric of the village, woven through shared labor and kinship, is frayed. Where once neighbors worked side by side, now there are empty places at the plow, silent gaps at the festival table. Grief lingers, soft but persistent, in the spaces between daily tasks. Yet the cycles of nature demand renewal. As the earth warms, the villagers return to their fields, driven by both need and hope. The work is slower, the pace measured by diminished strength, but the determination remains. Tools are repaired, plows readied, and what seed remains is pressed into the soil with careful hands. Each furrow turned is an act of defiance against the memory of hunger, a statement of belief in the future. The monastery plays a quiet role in this recovery. Monks offer advice on planting, distribute what seed they can spare, and tend to the sick and orphaned. Their presence provides stability, a reminder of continuity amid change. The priest speaks of endurance, of divine mercy, urging the faithful to trust in God's plan. His words, repeated at the altar and in the fields, seek to knit the village's spirit back together. Trade, too, offers a path to renewal. Merchants passing through bring goods and news, opportunities to exchange surplus or labor for needed supplies. Slowly, cautiously, connections between villages strengthen as communities lean upon one another in shared struggle. Though life remains hard, these bonds help to ease the burden, fostering a sense of resilience that transcends individual hardship. Over time, the visible wounds begin to fade. New life stirs in the fields, children's laughter returns to the lanes, and the rhythms of work resume their steady beat. Yet the memory of famine and disease lingers, etched into the collective heart of the village. It shapes the way grain is stored, the way herbs are gathered, the way prayers are spoken. It teaches caution, gratitude, and the fragile nature of abundance. In Charlemagne's empire, such cycles are not rare. Famine and disease visit with unsettling regularity, their timing and severity unpredictable. The peasants, shaped by centuries of such trials, learn to live with this uncertainty. Their endurance is not born of ignorance, but of hard-earned understanding that life is fragile, that fortune is fleeting, and that community and faith are their strongest shields against the forces they cannot control. And so, with each passing year, the village rises anew. Its people sow and reap, celebrate and mourn, bound by the unyielding rhythms of the land and the ever-turning wheel of fate. Through hunger and health, loss and renewal, they persist, carrying forward the quiet strength that sustains the heart of Charlemagne's vast and varied realm. Chapter 10. Justice in the Empire. In the villages of Charlemagne's empire, the rule of law is not distant or abstract, but woven into the very fabric of daily life. Justice is dispensed not in grand halls by learned judges, but often in the familiar surroundings of the manor court under the watchful eye of the lord or his appointed steward. For the common peasant, justice is a force both necessary and fearsome, capable of bringing resolution or ruin. It shapes behavior, relationships, and expectations, guiding each person's steps with an invisible yet palpable hand. Picture now the manor court assembled beneath the open sky or within the Lord's great hall. The gathering is solemn. Villagers stand in rough garments, heads bowed, awaiting their turn to speak or be judged. The steward presides, seated upon a raised chair, his manner stern but methodical. Scribes stand nearby, ready to record proceedings in the manor rolls, ensuring that memory and record align. The air hums with tension, for all present know that the decisions made here can touch every aspect of their lives. The cases brought before the court are varied. Disputes over land boundaries, accusations of theft, breaches of custom, and matters of marriage or inheritance all fall within its scope. Sometimes the offenses are small, a quarrel between neighbors, a stray animal damaging crops, or failure to pay dues. Other times the matters are graver, violence, dishonesty, or challenges to the authority of the Lord or church. Evidence is sparse by modern standards. Testimony carries great weight, and oaths are central to the process. A man accused of theft may be called to swear his innocence upon sacred relics, his honor and soul bound to his words. Witnesses, too, may be summoned, their statements shaped as much by loyalty and fear. In some cases, the judgment of God is sought through trial by ordeal, a hand plunged into boiling water, or a heavy stone carried a set distance. Survival or healing is taken as proof of innocence, misfortune as guilt. The punishments imposed are severe. Fines are common, their amounts carefully calculated based on the offense and the offender's means. More serious transgressions may bring corporal punishment, lashes upon the back, public humiliation, or, in the gravest cases, mutilation or execution. The community watches these sentences with a mixture of dread and grim acceptance. Justice, though harsh, maintains order, deterring acts that might disrupt the fragile harmony of village life. For peasants, the line between justice and oppression is thin. The Lord's interests often guide the steward's decisions, and those of lower status rarely prevail in disputes with wealthier neighbors or with the manor itself. Appeals are rare and dangerous, as challenging authority invites scrutiny and possible reprisal. Most peasants, knowing this, seek to avoid the court whenever possible, resolving smaller matters through private agreement or the council of elders. Yet the court also provides a measure of protection. It enforces rights, settles long-standing disputes, and offers a forum where wrongs may be aired. Without it, personal vengeance and blood feuds might flourish unchecked. The presence of structured justice, however imperfect, helps to maintain the delicate balance of village life, ensuring that grievances do not spiral into chaos. Religion, too, plays a role in shaping justice. The church teaches mercy and repentance, urging that punishments serve not only to correct but to reform. Priests may intercede on behalf of the accused, plead for leniency, or offer sanctuary in cases of particular hardship. The monastery provides refuge for those unjustly accused, though such protection is limited and often temporary. For the peasants of Charlemagne's empire, justice is a constant presence, sometimes a shield, sometimes a sword, always a force to be respected and feared. Its rituals and judgments, harsh though they may be, form part of the order that sustains the village, holding at bay the chaos that lies just beyond the fragile borders of the known world. The rhythms of justice are cyclical as the seasons. The manor court convenes at regular intervals, its gatherings marked upon the calendar alongside feast days and market fairs. For the peasantry, these sessions bring a mixture of anxiety and opportunity. Petty grievances, long-simmering quarrels, and questions of right and wrong all find their moment beneath the steward's gaze. Though the court is an instrument of the Lord's will, it also serves as a release valve for tensions that might otherwise fracture the small community. The process begins with the sounding of the court bell or the call of the manor's herald. Villagers assemble, some by obligation, others by curiosity. Attendance is expected of all who hold land or owe service. Those absent without cause risk a fine, another small burden added to the year's tally. The gathering itself becomes a communal event, a chance to exchange news, renew acquaintances, and observe the workings of authority firsthand. Cases are heard in order, the steward maintaining a brisk pace. Lesser matters, such as disputes over grazing rights or minor breaches of custom, are dispatched swiftly. The steward's decisions rest upon a blend of written law, local custom, and personal judgment. In many cases, the verdict is known before the words are spoken, for the patterns of power and influence run deep within the village. Yet surprises occur, and a reputation for fairness or a well-chosen plea may tip the balance. More serious cases command greater attention. Accusations of theft, violence, or dishonor draw the eyes of all present. The accused stands alone or with kin, facing the steward and his scribes. Witnesses are called, oaths sworn, and, when doubt lingers, the ordeal may be invoked. The villagers watch in hushed anticipation, for the outcome speaks not only to guilt or innocence, but to the unseen forces of divine justice that hover over all human affairs. Punishment follows swiftly upon judgment. Fines are levied in grain, livestock, or labor, striking directly at the household's fragile economy. Public penalties, such as time in the stocks or a flogging before the assembled crowd, serve as harsh reminders of the consequences of transgression. In rare cases of grave offense, exile or execution may be decreed, though such acts are reserved for the most dire breaches of law and order. The impact of justice extends beyond the individual's judge. Each sentence reverberates through the village, shaping behavior and reinforcing the boundaries of acceptable conduct. Parents instruct their children in the lessons of the court, warning them of the perils of dishonor and disobedience. Neighbors speak in quiet tones of those punished or acquitted, their fates becoming part of the shared memory of the community. The church's presence tempers this harsh landscape. Priests preach forgiveness and repentance, urging compassion even for the condemned. They remind the villagers that divine judgment surpasses human law, that mercy must balance justice. The monastery offers prayers for the accused and the accuser alike, seeking to heal the wounds left by conflict and punishment. For the peasantry, justice remains a double-edged force. It preserves peace and order, providing a framework within which life may unfold. Yet it also embodies the power of those above, their interests often weighing heavier than the truth. Navigating this world requires caution, wisdom, and a keen awareness of one's place within the intricate web of obligations and relationships. And so, with each passing session of the court, the rhythms of justice continue. The villagers return to their fields and hearths, their lives subtly shaped by the proceedings they have witnessed. The steward records the outcomes in the manor rolls, the priest offers prayers, and the cycle begins anew. Through this constant process, the fragile harmony of the village is maintained, allowing life in all its hardship and simplicity to endure beneath the broad sweep of Charlemagne's empire. Chapter 11. Feasting in the Emperor's Hall, far. Removed from the toil of the fields and the harsh justice of the manor court lies another world, one of grandeur and abundance. In the great halls of the emperor and his nobles, life unfolds on a scale unimaginable to the common peasant. Here, beneath timber-bird roofs and amid the glow of countless candles, feasts are held that dazzle the senses and proclaim the wealth and power of those who rule. For those fortunate enough to witness such spectacles, they reveal a realm of splendor that seems as distant from village life as the stars from the earth. Picture, if you will, the Emperor's Hall in Aachen, where Charlemagne himself holds court. The building is vast, its beams carved and painted, the walls hung with fine tapestries depicting scenes of conquest and piety. The air is thick with the scent of burning resin, roasted meats, and rich spices brought from distant lands. Along the length of a great table, nobles and high-ranking clergy sit in robes of silk and velvet, their fingers adorned with rings, their voices rising in laughter and debate. At the head of the hall sits the emperor, a figure of commanding presence. His garments are finely woven, a circlet of gold upon his brow. Around him, trusted advisors and favored warriors stand ready, their loyalty etched into every gesture. Servants move swiftly between the guests, bearing trays laden with delicacies, tender game, river fish, loaves of white bread, and sweet meats rarely seen beyond noble kitchens. Wine flows freely, poured from silver flagons into polished goblets. The feast is not merely an indulgence of appetite, but a display of authority and cultural refinement. Music fills the air, the strains of lyres and flutes blending with the soft hum of conversation. Poets recite verses extolling the emperor's virtues. Chroniclers record the evening's grandeur, and envoys from distant realms observe with measured interest. Each element serves a purpose, reinforcing the emperor's image as a ruler ordained by both God and history. For the few peasants who might find themselves within such a hall, perhaps as kitchen hands, torchbearers, or musicians, the experience is overwhelming. The scale of abundance, the richness of dress, and the sheer variety of food and drink stand in stark contrast to the meager fare and simple garments of village life. These rare glimpses into the world of nobility become treasured tales, retold by hearth and market stall for years to come. The structure of the feast reflects the rigid hierarchy of the empire. Seating is meticulously arranged, with rank determining one's place and portion. The highest nobles dine closest to the emperor, their plates heaped with choice offerings. Lesser lords and officials fill the middle tables, while retainers and servants partake only after the grander guests are satisfied. The message is clear. Status defines worth, both at the table and in the realm. Such feasts also serve as venues for political alliance and negotiation. Amid the toasts and revelry, matters of land, marriage, and military campaign are quietly discussed. Oaths are sworn, gifts exchanged, and loyalties reaffirmed. In this setting, the bonds that hold the empire together are strengthened, sealed with shared wine and solemn words. For the emperor, these gatherings project a vision of unity and prosperity. They remind all who attend of the empire's strength, its cultural sophistication, and the divine favor believed to rest upon its ruler. Yet beyond the glowing hall, in the cold fields and smoky huts, the peasants continue their unending toil, their lives touched only faintly by the echoes of such splendor. As the feast unfolds, the mood within the hall shifts and deepens. The early formality gives way to a more relaxed, if still carefully choreographed atmosphere. Laughter rings louder, goblets are refilled more quickly, and the hum of conversation grows rich and layered. Performers, jesters, acrobats, and storytellers take the floor between courses, their antics and tales providing both amusement and a further display of the emperor's patronage of the arts. The courses themselves arrive in a seemingly endless procession. Platters of roast boar, fragrant with herbs and crackling with crisp skin, are set before the guests. Game birds, their feathers plucked and their flesh tender, are served alongside stews of fish and root vegetables. Delicate pastries filled with spiced fruits follow, accompanied by bowls of nuts, honey, and cheeses aged to perfection. The scent of these dishes mingles with the flickering light of countless candles, casting a golden sheen across the hall. Among the noble diners, the conversation turns to matters of state. News from distant frontiers is shared, alliances reaffirmed, and the emperor's latest decrees discussed. Bishops speak of church affairs, of relics discovered or heresies suppressed. Military leaders recount victories and strategies, their words carefully measured for the emperor's ear. Every exchange carries weight, for in such settings, fortunes can rise or fall with a single phrase or a pledge. For those of lower rank, lesser nobles, distant vassals, or honored merchants, the feast offers a rare chance to gain favor or recognition. A well-timed compliment, a generous gift, or a display of wit might earn the emperor's notice. These moments of opportunity are fleeting but invaluable, for the favor of the court can transform a family's standing for generations. Meanwhile, the servants labor ceaselessly to maintain the smooth flow of the evening. Dozens of hands prepare, serve, and clear, moving with practiced efficiency. In the kitchens, the fires burn hot as new courses are ready. The humbler workers, stable hands, scullery maids, and porters watch the proceedings from the shadows, their presence acknowledged only when needed. For them, the feast is a night of hard labor, but also a glimpse into a world otherwise closed to their kind. As the night deepens, the music swells. Dances may be called, the nobles rising with stately grace to the sounds of harp and flute. The emperor watches from his place of honor, his approval or disapproval shaping the tone of the revelry. The feast, though grand, is not without its rules. Decorum must be maintained, and those who overstep the bounds of propriety risk censure or disgrace. Finally, as the candles burn low and weariness begins to settle upon the guests, the feast draws to a close. A final blessing is offered by the highest-ranking cleric present. Prayers for the emperor's health and the realm's prosperity. The nobles take their leave with deep bows and carefully chosen words, mindful of the impression they leave behind. The emperor withdraws to his private chambers, the weight of the empire momentarily set aside. The great hall, once filled with light and laughter, falls silent. Servants begin the long task of clearing and cleaning, while outside the night air lies cool and still beneath a canopy of stars. For the peasants who will hear of this feast in the days to come, it remains a distant wonder, a glimpse into a life of abundance and power that seems far removed from their own struggles. Yet the empire depends upon both worlds, the splendor of the court and the toil of the field. Each sustains the other in ways both seen and unseen, their destinies intertwined beneath the vast sweep of Charlemagne's rule. Chapter 12. Charlemagne's schools among Charlemagne's many ambitions. Few held as much quiet power as his desire to foster learning throughout his empire. Though the fields and villages remained much as they had for generations, in the halls of monasteries and palaces, a new reverence for knowledge began to take root. This movement, later known as the Carolingian Renaissance, sought not merely to preserve the wisdom of the past, but to nurture a more educated clergy and court, ensuring that the words of scripture, law, and governance would be understood and preserved for generations to come. Picture, then, a monastery school at the edge of a quiet village. The stone buildings rise above the surrounding fields, their walls thick with the scent of old wood and parchment. Within these walls, young boys gather at dawn, their breath misting in the cool air. Clad in simple tunics, they clutch wax tablets and styluses, their eyes wide with curiosity and apprehension. These pupils, drawn mostly from the nobility or the ranks of promising clergy, come to learn not the ways of the plow, but the mysteries of letters and numbers. Their day begins with prayer, the soft chants filling the chapel with solemn grace. Then, beneath the guidance of a monk or a scholar, lessons commence. Latin is the language of learning, its forms and rules taught with great care. The boys labor over the conjugation of verbs, the construction of sentences, their efforts shaping the foundation of future literacy. Alongside language, they study arithmetic, the simple yet essential calculations that underpin trade and governance. The texts they read are few but precious. Carefully copied by hand, they preserve the works of church fathers, classical philosophers, and Roman historians. The pages, adorned with intricate initials and occasional illuminations, bring both reverence and beauty to the act of reading. Through these texts, the young scholars glimpse worlds beyond their own, the breadth of history and the depth of human thought. Instruction is strict but not unkind. The teachers, mindful of the importance of their task, temper discipline with patience. Mistakes are corrected firmly, but with an eye toward nurturing curiosity. For Charlemagne's vision demands more than rote memorization. It seeks understanding, a generation of learned men who might serve church and empire with wisdom. Beyond the monastery, in the royal palace, similar efforts unfold. Charlemagne himself holds a deep respect for learning, surrounding himself with scholars such as Alcuin of York. Great minds gather to debate theology, philosophy, and the practical arts of governance. The emperor listens with care, his questions probing, his interest genuine. In this circle, the seeds of reform are planted, their influence spreading outward through the realm. Yet for the common peasant, this flowering of learning remains a distant phenomenon. Few among the serfs and villagers ever see a book, much less learn to read one. Their knowledge is oral, passed through stories, songs, and the guidance of elders. The rhythms of the land and the demands of survival leave little space for formal study. Still, the influence of the schools touches them indirectly. Priests, better educated, preach more clearly. Laws, more carefully written, bring a measure of consistency to the courts. Over time, these quiet changes shape the world in which they live. The church, deeply intertwined with this movement, sees both spiritual and practical value in education. A learned clergy can better guide the faithful, interpret scripture, and administer the sacraments. The preservation of sacred texts ensures the continuity of faith. Thus, the monasteries serve as both spiritual centers and guardians of knowledge, their scriptoriums echoing with the scratch of quills upon parchment. And so, in the quiet halls of Charlemagne's schools, a new chapter of the empire begins. Though its effects are not yet felt in every village or field, the pursuit of learning weaves itself into the heart of the realm, a subtle force shaping the future. As the years pass, the influence of Charlemagne's educational reforms begins to spread beyond the cloisters of monasteries and the halls of the imperial court. Bishops and abbots, inspired by the emperor's example, established schools within cathedral precincts and larger monasteries. Here, not only young boys destined for the clergy, but also sons of noble families receive instruction. Literacy, once the province of a narrow elite, begins to extend its reach, modestly widening the pool of those who can read and write. The curriculum remains focused on Latin, the language of church and empire, but expands to include elements of rhetoric, logic, and music. Arithmetic and astronomy also find a place, their practical applications valued for both religious observance and administrative tasks. Through these studies, a generation of scribes, priests, and officials is gradually formed, capable of recording laws, drafting correspondence, and preserving the wisdom of earlier ages. In the scriptoriums, the quiet labor of preservation continues. Monks bend over their desks, quills in hand, copying ancient manuscripts with unwavering care. Their work ensures that the words of Augustine, Boethius, and Virgil endure. The production of illuminated texts, with their vivid colors and intricate designs, adds a layer of artistry to this intellectual pursuit. These books, though few in number, become treasured objects, carried from monastery to monastery, their knowledge slowly seeding the empire. Charlemagne himself remains deeply invested in this movement. He corresponds with scholars, encourages the correction of corrupt texts, and supports the standardization of script. The development of the clear and legible Carolingian minuscule reflects this effort, making texts easier to read and more consistent across the empire. Though such details escape the notice of most peasants, they lay the groundwork for future generations of learning. For the common folk, the effects of this renaissance are subtle but real. Sermons grow clearer as priests better understand the text they preach. Laws, more carefully recorded, provide a firmer basis for justice. The spread of standard liturgical practices brings greater unity to religious observance. Though few peasants enter the schools, their world is nonetheless shaped by the quiet revolution of learning taking place around them. Occasionally, the benefits of education touch the village more directly. A clever boy, noticed by a priest or abbot, might be granted a place in the monastery school. For his family, this represents both honor and opportunity, a chance to rise beyond the narrow bounds of peasant life. Such instances are rare, yet they plant the idea that learning, once the domain of the powerful alone, might hold a broader value. Meanwhile, the empire itself grows stronger through these reforms. A literate clergy and bureaucracy enable more effective governance. The emperor's decrees travel farther, their intent more clearly understood. The church, with its unified practices and educated leaders, extends its influence over both spiritual and temporal matters. Through these intertwined developments, Charlemagne's vision of a Christian empire takes firmer hold. Yet the limitations remain. The fields still demand endless labor, the manor's obligations persist, and for most peasants, the rhythms of life are unchanged. Books remain rare and precious, their contents known only to a few. But the seeds have been sown. Over time, the pursuit of knowledge will continue to grow, slowly transforming the empire from within. In this way, Charlemagne's schools contribute to a legacy that endures far beyond his reign. They lay a foundation for the preservation of learning through the centuries, ensuring that the wisdom of the past is not lost to time. For the peasants of the empire, this legacy remains a distant light, yet one that will, in generations to come, help shape a broader world of thought and faith. Chapter 13. Pilgrimages and penances in the shadow of the church's towering presence within Charlemagne's empire. Faith shapes every aspect of life, from the sowing of fields to the settling of disputes. For the common folk, it offers both comfort and obligation, a constant presence in the cycle of their days. Among the most profound expressions of this faith are pilgrimages and acts of penance, journeys, and deeds undertaken to seek forgiveness, healing, or spiritual renewal. These acts, deeply personal yet shared across the realm, weave the lives of peasants and nobles alike into the broader fabric of Christian devotion. Imagine a small village at dawn. The air is cool, the earth damp with morning dew. A figure stands at the edge of the road, a simple staff in hand, a small pack slung over one shoulder. Around them, neighbors gather to offer farewells and blessings. This is a pilgrim, setting out upon a journey of faith, whether for a vow made in illness, a penance assigned by priest or court, or the fulfillment of a long-held hope. The road ahead stretches long and uncertain. Pilgrimage sites vary in renown and distance. Some travel to local shrines where relics of saints are said to grant healing or favor. Others, driven by deeper need or greater devotion, set their sights upon distant places, Aachen, with its sacred relics, or even Rome itself. The journey is arduous, fraught with danger and discomfort. Roads are rough, way stations few, and the threat of bandits or illness ever present. Yet the spiritual reward is believed to outweigh these trials, each step a testament to the pilgrim's sincerity. Along the way, the pilgrim joins a larger community of the faithful. Fellow travelers offer companionship and protection, their shared purpose forging bonds across lines of class and origin. Monasteries provide shelter and sustenance, their hospitality part of their sacred duty. At each stop, prayers are offered, relics venerated, and the journey continued with renewed resolve. The act of penance, often intertwined with pilgrimage, serves to atone for sin. Assigned by priests or mandated by the court, penances range from public acts of humility to long pilgrimages undertaken barefoot or in plain garments. The sight of a penitent upon the road, marked by simple dress and solemn bearing, evokes both sympathy and reflection among those who pass. Their journey, visible and humbling, reinforces the Church's role as arbiter of moral order. For the peasantry, these acts of devotion carry profound meaning. They offer a path to forgiveness, a means to seek divine favor beyond the reach of earthly justice. They also serve as reminders of human frailty and the constant need for spiritual vigilance. Through pilgrimage and penance, the individual's place within the vast order of creation is affirmed, their humility embraced, and their faith renewed. Upon reaching their destination, pilgrims often experience a mixture of awe and relief. The sight of a great cathedral or the veneration of a revered relic brings both emotional release and spiritual fulfillment. Prayers are offered, vows fulfilled, and small tokens purchased as reminders of the journey. The experience leaves a lasting imprint, one that shapes the pilgrim's understanding of faith and community. Returning home, the pilgrim is welcomed with respect. Their tales of distant places and sacred encounters enrich village life, adding to the shared narrative of the community. For those who undertook penance, their visible return signifies both personal redemption and the enduring power of the Church's moral authority. Through these journeys, the rhythms of faith and daily life intertwine. Pilgrimage and penance stand as profound expressions of devotion, shaping not only the individual's soul, but the spiritual landscape of Charlemagne's empire itself. In the quiet weeks and months following a pilgrim's return, the effects of the journey linger within the village. The stories brought back from far places of grand cathedrals, of relics shimmering in candlelight, of monks and fellow pilgrims encountered upon the road become woven into local lore. Around the hearth, neighbors listen with rapt attention, their imaginations kindled by visions of sacred sites they may never see. The pilgrims' words carry weight, their devotion and endurance earning a subtle elevation in the eyes of the community. For those who return from penance, the change is more than social. The completion of a difficult, humbling journey marks a form of spiritual renewal, whether imposed by the Church for sins confessed, or assigned by the Lord's court in cases of transgression. The act of penance restores one's place within both the spiritual and secular order. The priest, satisfied that repentance has been demonstrated, offers formal absolution. The community, witnessing the public nature of the act, grants a return to favor and fellowship. Yet such journeys are not without cost. Families left behind must shoulder the absent pilgrim's share of labor. Fields must be tended, rents paid, duties fulfilled, even in their absence. A pilgrimage, especially a distant one, strains the fragile balance of peasant life. To undertake it is a decision weighed with care, the spiritual rewards considered against the practical hardships that must be endured. In some cases, a lord or the church may sponsor a pilgrimage, granting both financial support and permission for travel. Such acts of patronage serve not only spiritual aims, but also reinforce social bonds, displaying the beneficence of the powerful. A peasant sent on pilgrimage by the local monastery, for example, returns with gratitude and renewed loyalty, their act of devotion a reflection of their patron's piety. The wider influence of pilgrimage reaches even those who never leave their village. The tales of the faithful inspire greater reverence for local saints and relics. Imitative acts, short walks to nearby chapels, offerings at roadside crosses become common. The rhythms of prayer and devotion deepen, shaped by the knowledge that even the humblest may seek direct communion with the divine through such journeys. Festivals commemorating great pilgrimages or saintly relics become focal points of communal life. On such days, villagers gather in their best garments, processions wind through the streets, and masses are said with special fervor. The sense of shared purpose and identity grows stronger, the bonds of faith weaving individuals into a larger whole. The monasteries play an essential role in fostering this devotion. Monks and abbots, through sermon and example, encourage acts of pilgrimage. Relics are displayed with solemn ceremony, their histories recounted to inspire the faithful. The monastery's scribes record the journeys of notable pilgrims, their deeds preserved for posterity. In this way, the ideal of pilgrimage becomes both a spiritual aspiration and a part of a cultural memory of the realm. For Charlemagne's empire, this culture of pilgrimage and penance serves multiple purposes. It reinforces the unity of Christian belief across diverse regions and peoples. It strengthens the moral authority of the Church, reminding all of the path to forgiveness and grace. It also fosters a sense of shared identity, binding the empire's inhabitants through common acts of faith. Amid the hardships of daily life, of unending labor, uncertain harvests, and the burdens of Lord and Church, these spiritual journeys offer both purpose and hope. They remind the peasant that beyond the visible world lies a greater order, a divine plan in which even the humblest soul has a place. Through the act of pilgrimage or the completion of penance, that place is affirmed, and life continues with renewed meaning beneath the enduring gaze of faith. Chapter 14. Daily life in a peasant village beneath the sweeping ambitions of emperors and the lofty prayers of monasteries. Beneath even the judgments of manor courts and the toll of church bells, life in a peasant village follows its own steady rhythm. It is a life marked by simplicity and hardship, by toil and small joys, by the constancy of nature and the slow turn of the seasons. In Charlemagne's empire, this daily life forms the unacknowledged foundation upon which the greater realm rests. Imagine now a village as the first light of morning breaks over the land. Smoke rises thinly from rough chimneys, the scent of peat and wood mingling with the cold air. The huts are simple structures of wattle and daub, thatched against the rain, their interiors dim and close. Within, families rise with the sun, their bodies stiff from another night on straw-filled pallets. The first task is always the fire, coaxed back to life with careful breath, its warmth spreading through the single room. The day begins with simple fare, a crust of coarse bread, perhaps a little cheese or broth if fortune allows. There is little time for leisure. The fields call, and the animals need tending. Men and older boys head to the plows or gather tools for other labor. Women tend gardens, care for the youngest children, and prepare what meals can be managed. Even the smallest children have tasks, gathering kindling or watching the family's few chickens. In the fields, work is ceaseless. The earth must be turned, seeds sown, weeds pulled, and crops harvested. Each task is done by hand, with tools passed down through generations. The rhythm of labor matches the turning of the seasons, planting in the cool days of spring, tending through the heat of summer, gathering the harvest before autumn's chill sets in. Failure is not an option, for hunger always looms just beyond the horizon. The village itself is a small world. Perhaps a score of families bound together by necessity and custom. Life here is communal. Tools and labor are shared, disputes settled among neighbors when possible. Festivals and holy days bring moments of respite when songs are sung and stories retold. Yet the web of obligation is ever present. Dues to the manor must be met, tithes to the church paid, corvée labor fulfilled. The weight of these demands shapes every decision, every hope. Children grow quickly, their childhood's brief. By the age of 7 or 8, they are expected to contribute, learning the skills that will sustain them. The cycle of life is familiar: birth, work, marriage, children, and too often, early death. Illness and accident claim many before their time. Yet, amid these hardships, families endure, their bonds deepened by shared experience. The church provides both guidance and structure. The village priest, though often humble, wields great influence. He marks the rites of passage, baptisms, marriages, funerals. His words in the pulpit shape the villagers' understanding of their place in the world. Faith offers comfort and hope, promising that beyond the toil of this life lies a greater reward. The rhythms of prayer and feast day observance give meaning to the otherwise unchanging flow of time. Nature, too, is a constant presence. The rising and setting of the sun, the phases of the moon, the changing of the wind, all I watch closely. A poor harvest or an unexpected frost can spell disaster. Superstitions and folk wisdom mingle with church teachings, guiding daily decisions. The peasant's relationship with the land is one of both reverence and fear, shaped by the knowledge that survival depends upon forces often beyond human control. In this world, small joys are treasured. The birth of a healthy child, a bountiful harvest, a warm fire on a cold night. The laughter of children at play, these moments shine brightly amid the labor and hardship. They sustain the spirit, reminding the villagers of what they work for, of the fragile beauty of life beneath the ever-turning sky. As the day unfolds, the rhythms of village life settle into their familiar patterns. In the fields, men labor steadily beneath the shifting sky, their movements shaped by long habit and necessity. The creak of wooden carts, the lowing of cattle, and the rasp of tools against soil form a quiet symphony of work. Conversation is sparse, the focus on the task at hand, though occasional words or songs drift between neighbors, softening the monotony of toil. Back within the village, the women's day is equally full. Beyond tending gardens and preparing meals, they spin wool, mend clothing, and care for children and elders. The hearth is the heart of the home, its fire carefully tended to ensure warmth and the means to cook. Here, amidst the scent of smoke and simmering stew, the bonds of family and community are nurtured. Older women pass down stories and wisdom, their words weaving the past into the present. Children move between these spheres, their days a blend of work and play. They learn through observation and imitation, their games echoing the tasks of adulthood. A boy may practice with a wooden plow, a girl with a small spindle. Even the youngest contribute where they can, their small hands gathering kindling or helping to tend the animals. Through these acts, they become part of the village's enduring cycle. The changing seasons shape every aspect of life. In spring, the world awakens, fields prepared for new growth. Summer brings long days of labor beneath the sun, crops nurtured with care and vigilance. Autumn's harvest is a time of both relief and anxiety, the yield measured against the needs of the coming winter. And winter itself, though a season of rest from fieldwork, is marked by cold, hunger, and the ever-present need for preparation. Each season carries its own challenges and its own moments of beauty, their rhythms etched into the lives of all who dwell upon the land. Relations with the manor are a constant undercurrent. The steward visits regularly, recording dues and labor owed, ensuring the Lord's interests are upheld. Though most dealings are routine, tensions sometimes flare, disputes over land or obligations requiring careful negotiation. The villagers tread carefully in these matters, their survival dependent upon a fragile balance of obedience and quiet resistance. Faith remains a cornerstone of village life. The small church, modest beside the manor's grandeur, offers a place of solace and hope. Here, beneath worn beams and flickering candles, villagers gather for mass, for feast days, for baptisms and funerals. The priest's words, drawn from scripture and tradition, guide their understanding of a world often harsh and uncertain. Through prayer and ritual, the villagers seek both divine protection and a sense of meaning amid their daily struggles. Evenings bring a measure of peace. With the day's work done, families gather around the hearth. Simple meals are shared, stories told, songs sung. The glow of the fire softens the hardships of the day, drawing family and neighbors into a shared warmth. It is in these moments that the strength of the community is most deeply felt. Each individual bound to the others by ties of kinship and mutual need. Sleep comes early, for the days begin at dawn. Beneath thatched roofs, villagers rest, their dreams shaped by hope, memory, and the unending demands of the land. Tomorrow will bring the same tasks, the same challenges, but also the same small joys. This is the rhythm of life in a peasant village, enduring and unchanging beneath the vast sweep of Charlemagne's empire. Though unseen by history's grand chroniclers, it is this life humble, constant, resilient that forms the true heart of the realm. In their quiet perseverance, the peasants carry forward the empire's strength. One day, one season, one generation at a time.